Have the KLR and the Super Tenere lined up. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what these bikes look like side by side. Now these bikes are completely different from one another, but similar in many ways. I just came back from a ride on the Super Tenere, and I really haven't had a big chance of riding the Klr650, but these are two of my adventure bikes. And of course I have two other bikes in the garage. I have my SH150 and the Ascot, and I like these bikes a lot. I like the ADV style, but I would definitely keep a scooter in my arsenal because when you live in the city, and I live in the outskirts, but I have to commute in, and having a little scooter like this just makes life so much easier. But I wanted to give you an overview of these bikes. So as you know, the Klr650 is an old design. I believe this one is the new redesign, started in 2008. And I used to have a 99 Klr650 and I liked it. But this one is very different than the 99. I was expecting it to be very similar, but suspension, the wheels, the way it rides is very different. Maybe because it's newer. Styling wise, I like it much more than the old KLR. The old KLR, there's nothing wrong with it. It's definitely a lot more basic looking, but the KLR definitely looks really cool. The Super Tenere is a fantastic bike and a much better road bike than the KLR. The KLR, it's got that front 21-inch front wheel as opposed to the 19-inch front wheel. But both of these bikes side by side, you can tell the mass of the Super Tenere. It doesn't look too different, but then you come to the front and then you start to see how massive they really are. Of course, I do have the crash bars on the Super Tenere, and on the KLR I have nothing, so no protection. I should probably get it. And there's some little issues with the KLR. You see that there's some plastic that has been fixed here, but it's a very simple thing. You know, these bikes look better with some crash damage. And the wind protection on the Super Tenere is worlds better. If your intended use is riding on the road, cross country on the road, the Super Tenere is a much better bike. But if you want to do forest roads and just kind of ride in some single track trails, you can do it on the KLR. And I have ridden KLRs before off-road. They're difficult because it is a heavy bike. This one is almost as heavy as my V-Strom 650. So that is kind of a big pig. And the Super Tenere, that's a 600-pound bike. So you're not really going to be going too well off-road. Now, both of these bikes come equipped with center stands, and that's one thing that you really should get as an adventure bike rider. And my V-Strom 650, I rode cross-country without a center stand, and then I had to do a bunch of like chain maintenance. It makes it much more difficult. So up front here, you notice that you just have one rotor. This one's got two rotors. This one's got upside down forks. This has got conventional forks with some gaiters. It's these things to kind of protect it, which I think it looks kind of cool. And even road bikes these days have that scrambler look with the gaiters, and I think that's a cool style. Both of these have aftermarket windscreens. This is the touring windscreen. I like the looks of the Super Tenere just a little bit more, but it is a more road-oriented bike. So the crash bars are also nice. I also have a really big aluminum crash bar, and then this one's plastic. The filter on the Super Tenere is right there. It's a cartridge. And then on this one, it's like an old style. I mean, everything about this is old. And then you have a carburetor on the KLR. This one's fuel injected. And the big things is that the radiator is up front, very flat on the KLR. The radiator on this is sideways, and you can see the intake right here. It's like a big hole. When you look at the symmetry On the right side, there's no hole. And then on the left, there is that intake. And another thing, when you ride it, you'll notice right away that the suspension on the Super Tenere is much better. And the wind protection is much better. If you just look at the mass this thing has, your legs kind of fit in here really well. My body is very well suited for the Super Tenere because like my legs and everything fit really well. On the V-Ram, I had a little bit of an issue kind of fitting because my legs are kind of long, but I'm just average, like 5'9". But this one fits me much better, and I think it looks better while I ride it. And the wind protection kind of flows around your legs, so even in the winter, on this bike, you don't get as cold, which is kind of hard to believe. And then you have like the adjustable suspension. The suspension of the Super Tenere is much better than the KLR. So if you're thinking that if you really ride the KLR, you want to be able to upgrade the suspension. On the Super Tenere, you don't really need to. The horsepower, of course, is much different. Super Tenere makes 100 horsepower, 110, I believe, 100 pounds of torque. It's kind of a crazy amount of torque. The KLR is definitely lacking in power, but that's kind of like what you get. You get a very minimalistic bike when you get the KLR. And you get a very good dual sport. This is probably one of the better street-oriented dual sports you can get. And even the new one is very, it's very inexpensive. The Super Tenere, that's a $20,000 bike. Of course, I didn't buy it for $20,000. I bought it for around like $6,000. So I think that's kind of like the price of these KLRs, these Super Teneres. Engine-wise, the Super Tenere is a parallel to two-cylinder, and the KLR is a thumper, single-cylinder. It's kind of hard to say which one is the most reliable. I kind of give a nod to the Super Tenere. I think you'll have more maintenance-free miles on the Super Tenere than the KLR. The KLR, though, you can kind of fix it with bubble gum. It's kind of like these bikes that they've been made for so long, sold so many of them that there's so many parts. You'll never run out of parts for this old KLR. And even with the new one, you'll find plenty of parts. The dash of the KLR is so antiquated, not even a fuel gauge. And then when you go here, this is antiquated for a Super Tenere or a modern open class bike, but it is much more modern compared to the KLR. When I turn it on, you hear the fuel injection priming, and then you have like a nice digital dash. This one, the Super Tenere has got 50-something thousand miles. This one's got 10,000 miles. This one's got an FMF aftermarket exhaust. This one's got the stock exhaust. I might switch this to that because I kind of like the idea of not having a zipper. So this is kind of cool. And handlebars on both of these bikes is pretty wide. And the handlebars on the Super Tenere are a little bit lower than the KLR. The KLR is like more upright. And this one is definitely like a little bit more street. And the seat height on the Super Tenere is lower than the KLR. So the KLR is actually higher up than this one. I can pretty much flat foot the Super Tenere, but not the KLR. The KLR requires a little bit more height. But there's some really, really great things stock with this. It comes with like a 12-volt cigarette lighter, which is not something really that breaks the bank. The owner of the KLR, the previous owner, did put this and heated grips. That is a little bit of an overview. I'll probably be doing a very in-depth review of both of these bikes, comparing them. And also I'm going to do a review of the Klr650 because, you know, I usually do that. And they're both really great bikes. And You know, I just had the XR650R. Much different. The KLR is very different than the XR. XR is a off-road bike that was street legalized, but let's start both of these bikes and hear them run. The thumper sounds really good. It's a noise that not a lot of people like these days, but I like it. You have to push it pretty well. Come on. There we go. I haven't started in a while because of the temperature. Look at these. It doesn't take long to really warm up. And it's already idling perfect. I do like to close the, is it this way? Yeah, off. No, off is this way. That's off. And it sounds good. It's a very good sounding bike. But it is carbureted, so it's kind of an interesting thing. Turn it off. Now let's start the Super Tenere. You can tell the weight of the bikes when you move them in the garage. All right, let's hit the... Very different sound. This bike is warm because I just took it for a ride and I haven't ridden it in a while, so... But that's pretty much like the overview between the Yamaha Super Tenere from 2012 and the 2017 Klr650 that's still carbureted. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Kind of stuck here. The cops won't bother me.